everyone. Welcome to the Drop and Dimes Pod. And today I'd like to welcome some special guests hailing from Ann Arbor, Michigan, where I used to live. Brothers Carl and Alex Rosaen from the Rosaen Pistons podcast. Carl and I used to work at the same place, and we quickly found our shared love of hoops. And he and his brother had me on their pod many moons ago, and so today I get to return the favor. Welcome, Brothers Rosaen.
Thanks,
Thanks.
Michael.
This is Carl, so you can know my name and to my voice.
Yeah, nice to be here. I'm Alex. Yeah, the now we could say defunct or on hiatus Rosaen Pistons podcast. We didn't achieve escape velocity from the Van Gundy era. We just couldn't make it. But maybe it's time to get back on the bandwagon and start it up again. We'll see.
No, I was excited to get back onto some sort of basketball podcast. Honestly, Michael, just you doing this, and if we can come on every once in a while, that might be enough Roseanne for the world.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how the Pistons do this playoffs and see if they can keep going. They managed to win tonight. So, how are you guys feeling about this game, about the series?
Well, at about halftime, I was kind of panicking because we were like, it looked kind of like the first game. Like we weren't losing because they didn't get out to an early lead, but we were still, it was like kind of playing even, and we kept on making a bunch of dumb mistakes. We're playing good defense, but turning it over a lot. And I was like, is this going to be like a super close series every game and it might be a toss up? And then finally, in the third quarter, we broke through, and it just kind of, to me, like the Pistons, when we're playing well, we just play with such force and domination on defense that it leads to offense. And like that third quarter was kind of like what it feels like when we are dominating. But it's also hard to put your finger on when it's not going well, like why? Because it's like if we don't have quite enough effort to quite get enough turnovers, it just all kind of starts collapsing. So the first game was a complete nightmare.
Yeah, it was like when we're at our worst, we time without scoring, and it feels like we go like a year without scoring. It's interminable. And then we do that to the other team too. I mean, we shut off the water on the Magic in the third quarter here, and it's like such a relief because that first game where we just couldn't put the ball in the basket. It's like, oh gosh, are all the commentators right? But yeah, we put it together.
Yeah, it was like a good battle back and forth. Maybe got to one team would get a 5 point lead, the other team would get a 5 point lead, and then all tied up at the end of the half, and then you guys really just blew them away in that third quarter. Wow, it was like 38-16 in the third. At halftime, I was listening to Barkley and them, and Barkley was upset that the Magic weren't exploiting mismatches. What do you guys think about like kind of the strategy? It seemed like Jalen Duren, he still didn't have a big game, but you guys come away with the win here.
Yeah, I mean, I was just looking at that, and I guess at least this game, Durant still didn't really get going. He didn't look as out of sorts as the first game, and he played competently. I was happy that Asar Thompson played full minutes tonight. Like I feel like we when we were like not unsure of ourselves and like pulling Asar in the fourth quarter last game, like I felt like it reminded me of the Knicks series last year. I'm like, we got to live or die by our defense, and we got to have Asar out there. I'm honestly looking at the box score right now. I'm kind of not happy that like Ron Holland played 7 minutes. Like I feel like he needs to be out there. Like I think we have to lean into like our full shutdown defense, and everything else comes from that. And a lot of Jalen Duren's like alley oops come on fast breaks. So, like when we're breaking things down, like him and Cade are just a great pairing. And when we're doing half court, if they plan for us and they pack the paint, we can't get to him as easily. I still am a little bit puzzled, like because normally he still is just a really good offensive player, and I can't put my finger on why. Maybe you have to just give the Magic credit on their defense.
And I think what you said is a great illustration about the mystery of like, should you have a guy who's so productive like Duren be your second best guy and pay him a max? Because if the system isn't working, he can be totally shut out. He can't just kind of be like Moncaro and force a mediocre shot and just make a lot of them, to do shot making. It's just not what he does. He ends up with like a really high, field goal percentage, box plus minus, playing within the system, getting offensive rebounds. But we got outworked in the first game, and it seemed like every time we passed the ball to him, the pass wasn't in the right spot, or if it was in the right spot, he just fumbled it out of bounds. It was like we were, shook. And it's just tough to have a guy be able to have one of our main guys potentially no show like that. A little bit like probably the Magic fans are saying about Wagner tonight. But Wagner plays a position where he has the ball in his hands and he's a distributor, and so it's like, oh, he can't create. So for Duran, it's like he's just like the ultimate complementary player. How much is that worth? It feels like it's worth a lot when things are going well. He did okay tonight, and he didn't fumble passes out of bounds, but he didn't make a lot happen himself either. We love Duran. Sky's the limit for him, but yeah, it's just kind of an interesting mix of he's great, but he's not causing himself things to be great. He just plays within the flow and executes everything.
So that's an interesting point, Alex, and I want to talk more about the Pistons as a whole and their future and stuff a little later. But I don't watch that many Pistons games, but I tuned in a couple times, and it seemed to me like Duran had become more of like a create his own shot offensive force this year, and that maybe is kind of what was propelling him to be in All-Star games. He's getting a lot of talk that he might get a third team All NBA. Am I wrong? Is that not the case? Is he just only creating off of like pick and rolls or something?
Well, you're not wrong. I was leaning back on his reputation a little bit. He did much more this season than before create things. In particular, when he was faced with somebody who's kind of a stiff, upright, slow center, he could get the ball above the free throw line, turn and face the basket, and kind of drive by him and shoot a layup. I think I was just channeling a little frustration from the first game where somehow, I don't know if it was Wendell Carter or it was just their scheme where he couldn't do anything. He puts the ball on the floor, it gets stolen. We try to pass him the ball, it gets tipped, or if it gets to him, he fumbled it. So maybe it was just one of those things where the Magic are a good defensive team and they're playing really hard and they could neutralize him. But there absolutely were games this season where he was a creator because of the matchup. And the scheme wasn't, based around taking him away for whatever reason. I'm not enough of like a scout slash coach slash like film room guy to where I exactly know what I'm seeing about what's the difference between how do they take him away or not. But it is possible to take him away in a way that is not possible to take Cade Cunningham's game away. And that's the difference, I guess.
Yeah,
And towards the
Wendell
end of the season,
Carter. Go ahead. Go.
well, towards the end of the season, when he was putting up some big numbers, like 30 points in a couple of the games, some of those were against like crappy teams, like New Orleans or I'm looking back now, like against Memphis. I guess against Toronto, he had a big game. So I'm actually eager to see if we can get out of this series, like knock on wood. I would expect that he'll have some better matchups in other series and look a lot better. It might just be that this is a tough, like this kind of shows the risk of being like a non-outside shooting player that you can game plan against. But I would expect him to look better than this at some point.
Yeah, Wendell Carter is. I wouldn't call him a stiff. Yeah, so that's why. Yeah, whereas like a Jacob Polo from
Toronto.
Toronto, he can probably get that label. Yeah, so Wendell Carter, I think in that first game they really are just kind of they were letting Cade do his thing, but not helping off of him. Seemed like, and so he scored 40, but the rest of the team was shut off.
That's right. And the thing that everyone pointed out, the reason I think kind of nobody believes in the Pistons as contenders, finally Mike Breen tonight, on the broadcast was saying respectful things, but just on a lot of the Bill Simmons, Zach Lowe guys, they're respectful, but they kind of gave the Pistons like the fourth best chance in the East to get to the finals, and it's like we won. The Bad Boys championship teams didn't win 60 games. Come on, guys. Like, but what they had their finger on was the lack of outside shooting, and when you have Asar Thompson on the floor and his guy can be 15 feet away from him, sagging into the paint, bothering Cade. Cade Cunningham had a great game, but he had 7 turnovers tonight. Some of it was because Orlando's playing forceful defense, and it seemed like we forgot how to dribble because we lost our composure a little bit. But also, they're getting their hands in there, and part of the reason is that Duncan Robinson has gravity, and Asar Thompson, Ron Holland have anti-gravity. and that makes it tough in the half court. And yet we had the 10th best offense in the league this year because we offensive rebound and we score in transition, and that's finally what we got going in the third quarter tonight. Is like our defense turns into offense and opens things up.
Okay, so I'm hearing that you guys are feeling a little disrespected in the national media, and I want to explore that further. But let's talk first about what you were just saying. It brought up a point with me. I think in the national media, they really see the Pistons as kind of like a heliocentric team, sort of like those Harden teams from Houston or like a Luka Doncic type team. Would you agree with that?
Well, the thing is, on offense, we are, especially when it gets to half court. But the reason that we still more than kept our head above water, I think we were like 8-2 at the end of the season without Cade, was because of our defense. I mean, we actually scored fewer points tonight than last night, than the last game. I mean, and why does it feel so much better? Because our defense absolutely kicked ass. I mean, if you look at why we end up beating people, oftentimes it's because we end up getting more shots than them because of turnovers and offensive rebounds. And in the first game, we had like 10 or 12 fewer shots than Orlando. In this game, we finally had more shots, and it comes down to the discipline to just have shutdown defense and to get offensive rebounds and to force turnovers. And then Cade is also a good defender, but then so awesome on offense that he like makes up for just like kind of a lackluster offensive squad. So we have a lot of defensive specialists. I mean, having Asar being like one of our best players. I mean, I'm wearing an Asar jersey right now, and he's just like he does not have a touch. Like when like he do you see him airball like the lefty hook near the basket tonight and stuff, and like he can get to the rim with force, and he can like if he has a couple of moves and a couple of like jump shots where he'll kind of like stop and pull up and make some shots, but he does not have an offensive touch. But yet he's so valuable to us because our identity is on defense. So I think that I wouldn't call us heliocentric just because Cade's probably not even our top, like he's not like a top five defender on our team in their defensive identity. So it's kind of a
Yeah,
funny
I
thing.
mean, I think it refers to the offense.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
it's not like we're blowing people out with like a top three like a top three offense because of Cade. You know what I mean? Like we're kind of like we're a respectable offense, plus our defense makes us a good offense because of Cade.
And we are heliocentric in the half court for sure. I mean, if you just look at like the usage rate of guys on our team, like Cade's above 30, and then like Jalen Duren's below 24, and then we have Danis Jenkins at 21, and then we have like Paul Reed and Jaden Ivey, and no one else is like above 20, and 20% usage is like pulling your weight. It's like par for so it's like where's all this usage going? It's like it's Cade or Danis Jenkins if he's the one leading. And then other than that, it's just like whoever's running out on the break and getting offensive rebounds and stuff. And that's how we roll. And on the strength of that, we had like kind of an average. I think we were like 15th or 16th in the half court offense. Last time I looked at the cleaning the glass site on that. So it's not like we're bad on that. The Pacers made it to the finals 2 years in a row having a bottom 10 defense. So you don't have to be awesome on both ends of the floor to make it there. We have like the 10th best offense and the second best defense. So we're in the mix. We're not as good as the Thunder, and we were about the same as Boston before they got Tatum back. So yeah, but everyone was seeing what we were seeing in that first game, which is if you can make a game plan around keeping Cade out of the lane, it is tough for us, and we really do have to dig our way out on defense and in transition.
I think the point Carl made about, they scored less, but they won is a really good point. In that third quarter, the Magic were just stuck on 3 points for what seemed like the longest time. I mean,
It was
um,
glorious.
yeah, I mean, the Magic could really start not scoring. That was pretty evident in their first play-in game. Not so much against the Hornets in Charlotte, where I now live. That was a brutal game. But yeah, nice defense in that third and way to take it home. But let's transition to just kind of and we've already been talking about it, just like more about their season. I'm curious on what you guys think. What were they were like a fifth seed last year, is that right? Or sixth seed?
I think we were the sixth seed.
Sixth seed.
Yeah.
So, and they did pretty well against New York, gave them a pretty good scare. But now, the first seed this year, what do you guys think were the keys to kind of making that leap?
Well, I was surprised. I was talking to Alex or texting with some friends, and my over under was the same as last year. And what I was saying is I want to solidify this year and show that we actually are a decent team. It wasn't like because it was such a crazy leap from the previous year. We were like abysmally bad, and then we went to like making the playoffs. Maybe how it felt in Charlotte this year a little bit. Just like, hey, we're actually a good team. But then I wanted to show that this is real, and then grow from there. And then I was actually just surprised. And I think what changed is that Cade got even better, which is just so awesome. And then Duran had made a huge leap. Those seemed like the top two things.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I had my little, spreadsheet numerical projection pretty simple before the season, and I had us at 50 wins, and I thought maybe I better dial it back a little bit. That seems, I don't know if we're going to go to there. Not in my wildest dreams. I would have bet 100 to 1 against us winning 60 games this year. Luckily, I don't really gamble too much, so didn't have to worry about that. And Carl's right. I mean, the difference in my mind was Cade took another leap, and Duran took a leap that I didn't quite see coming. I was sort of looking, my optimistic like view on the season was like, okay, well, based on kind of age and profile, Cade could like maybe go up to like where Penny Hardaway was at his peak, and he kind of did that. And just in terms of, I like box plus minus as a kind of a simple, all in one stat. And Duran, I thought, well, best case scenario, he ends up being like, making the leap to like young Chris Bosh in Toronto. And he almost kind of did that in terms of his productivity. He's a different player. Bosh is more facing the basket, driving by people and dunking. But he wasn't really shooting threes yet. But, the real big surprise I think was like Malik Beasley was like pretty important for us last year. And Duncan Robinson, came in and we are like, okay, well, is he I mean, Malik
Michigan
Beasley is
guy.
defender, but like, is Duncan Robinson going to be able to stay on the floor? And a friend of mine put it this way that Duncan Robinson is good at being a bad defender in that like he somehow is just able to like make it so his weaknesses don't just totally cripple you. He tries hard. He's roughly in the right spots. He's has about the right height for his position, and then he like gets blown by and fouls people and stuff. But he's not just like atrocious or doesn't try or anything like that. And he slotted in for Beasley, and it kind of worked. And we just didn't really have many weaknesses this year. I mean, we didn't have many guys that hurt us when they were on the floor. Levert was kind of up and down. He had some stretches where he played well, and he had a long stretch where he played badly. And the Pistons subreddit like really hates Karis Levert, but he's a Wolverine, so I like him. And he's a veteran. He tries hard on defense, and we kind of have to play him some because he can hit an open shot, and we we really need that. But anyway, it just basically we kind of rolled Yahtzee. Like all the things that needed to go right kind of went right, and this is what it looks like, and it's just awesome.
And like Dennis Jenkins out of nowhere, like being a really solid rotation player and actually kind of reliable to take the offense when Cade's off the floor. That was a complete like found money. I actually thought that Asar might take a leap this year, and he didn't really make a big leap. He's still awesome, but he's one of my favorite players in the team. I'm kind of excited for the future because I mean,
He
if he
was
took this,
third place in Defensive Player of the Year.
yeah, I mean, he is he. I thought he might take a leap offensively and be a little bit more like his brother or something like that. I know his brother was always expected to be a little bit more effective offensively, but I remember someone was pointing out that like because Asar had missed some time, if you just took into account like the half season he had missed due to injury, he actually was kind of on track with his brother, and so I was sort of like hoping that he would sort of be more of a playmaker, like basically able to like attack the rim or like break down defenses. You see signs of that sometimes, but he didn't take it offensively, but he's an amazing defensive player, and he still functions in our offense pretty well a lot of times where he can make an extra pass or just so athletic and get be in the right place. But yeah, so it was sort of like I would not have predicted why we were going to be so much better. I mean, I might have hoped that Cade would become. I never been maybe first team All NBA. Like we haven't had a first team All NBA player since Grant Hill, and I'm not sure if he's quite going to make it. It kind of sounds like he's a neck and neck with Jalen Brown for the fifth spot, but like honestly, there was a point 3 years ago where I wasn't sure Cade would like ever be all NBA. I thought he'd like peak at like All Star. I was kind of worried because he just wasn't efficient enough. He would average like 24 points and get like 7 assists and 5 turnovers, and that was kind of like the way he was. And I was like, I love him, but is he really good? And then he's made a couple leaps, and I'm so happy. It's just amazing.
His effective field goal percentage is still, fairly low for a superstar at 513. Not sure what his true shooting.
Yeah, I mean
He's getting to
that's the
the
other.
his true shooting's a little better. He's getting to the line more than he was before. But yeah, but
564.
it's still not great. And so his shot making and second in the league in assists is really where he shines. And then being a two-way player where he's not our shutdown defender, but he's got good size. He plays hard. He gets kind of a lot of blocks for a guard. If he switches onto a wing, it's not an emergency like it is with a lot of teams' point guards. So, I mean, he's just a great guy for us to build around, and he seems to. What I'm really impressed by him every half season, he seems to kind of get a little better and just clean some stuff up. Like he'll just get a little better at turnovers, a little better at getting to the line. From the beginning to the end of the year, suddenly he started hitting more open threes, and so he's just got that work ethic and talent. And I always had that good feeling from like everyone he plays with says he's the best guy they play with. Like he was at that like Team USA camp, like wherever the second team that's having the Olympic team practice against, and everyone was really impressed with him there. So and he's a good character guy by all accounts. So yeah, we love Cade, but yeah, having some more shots going would be good. Probably having a little more space to operate would help that happen.
Yeah, well, it's definitely great at shot creation. That kind of goes into the heliocentric argument I was talking about earlier. But I think he's creating way more shots than the other candidates like Jalen Brown or Mitchell for that
Yeah,
And
fifth
the biggest thing
spot.
is he cleaned up his turnovers. He used to really struggle with that, and I think
yeah,
this year he finally got him down, or at least in comparison to his
yeah. Just
assist.
moving in the right direction
Yeah,
on that for sure.
I remember a few years back, like someone posted a Reddit question. It's like, or maybe it was Simmons, and they were talking about, who do you think's gonna be better in 5 years? John Morant or Cade Cunningham? And I think Simmons at the time or whoever it was saying, well, I'd bet on Cade because John's gonna get injured or something like that. And definitely, I think Cade won that argument.
Yeah, if Cade's got any guns, he knows how to keep them off camera.
That's a key. So, what do you guys think about Biggerstaff? Do you think he should get Coach of the Year?
I mean,
I,
sure. We made a big leap. We have, a very similar roster to the one that lost 20 plus games in a row a couple years ago under Monty Williams. And there are a couple things coaches can do. They can have you prepared. They can, yell at you all the time if you don't try hard. Stan Van Gundy was really good at that. But they can have a philosophy and an identity and all that, and that's what everyone talks about with the Pistons this year. And I think JB plus the players buying into it, plus having a roster that makes sense with it, that all fits together. So, I mean, I think he deserves it as much as anyone. But but I think Boston. Also, Joe Mazzulla has a great case too because the performance compared to expectations, identity, pulling guys off the scrap heap and having them do well. So I'm not going to be too upset one way or the other about it, but he's definitely a candidate. In fact, I'd almost rather he didn't win it because it seems like guys get Coach of the Year and then they get fired the next year. It happens a bunch. Like I don't know, like JB has some baggage. JB has some baggage from Cleveland where he like had the Jared Allen, Cleveland team doing well, and then they have some
he
embarrassing
won Coach of the
playoff
Year at
loss.
Cleveland. That literally happened to him. Like
No, he
No,
hasn't
but
won it. No.
Dwayne Casey in Toronto though,
Yeah.
Coach of the Year. Then they lose, and Nick Nurse gets hired, and we pick him up. But anyway, yeah, JB's done great, and he seems to be a great fit. The sports press just really loves to be like, ooh, adjustments though. What if you did adjustments? You know, maybe they probably are doing a lot of adjustments, and if we lose, it's because they didn't work. And I don't think it's necessarily on the coach. I don't know. I find it very hard to understand how to know whether a coach is doing a good job or not.
Yeah,
honestly, as a
all I
fan.
know is that like our team has really great chemistry and buy-in. Like you could not have a dysfunctional locker room and play like we do. And I'm not sure to what credit he should get for that. But like if he's a big part of that, then I think that's kind of a really tough thing to pull off and sustain. I do remember in the playoffs last year, like having a sinking. This might just be a coincidence, but like in one of the key New York games when he pulled, we were up like a few points and he pulled Asar out and then Brunson went on a run and as soon as he pulled him out, I was like, what are you doing? And like, and so I've had some bad feelings where it seemed like he didn't have confidence in like what lineup we should be playing or like kind of loses, like tries to play players that I don't think are as good to try to score some more points or something. Like even in the first game against the Magic, I had a little bit of a echo of that. So I guess I'll kind of see how we weather these playoffs. Like my full opinion of him, I think will be contingent on these playoffs. But I'm not like I think I like him. I just don't know enough to really feel confident that he's like definitely the best coach in the league or something like that.
Yeah, well, in our awards prediction pod, I picked him, and I picked him because I think he's been a good coach for a while, and maybe gotten in a bad deal some places, and yeah, I mean the Pistons rise from, like you said, like the 13 games to 44 to 60. Great progression, and yeah, I mean Missoula definitely has a great case, and a few other coaches, but I think Biggerstaff deserves to be. And
Yeah,
when are you going to do it
I think you're
besides
correct.
when he gets 60 games? Yeah, for the first time. So, okay. Well, what do you guys think? What do you guys think this year? Do you think you can win it all? Where do you think the Pistons will be realistically in the playoffs?
I going into the playoffs, I was feeling pretty good about making it to the Eastern Conference Finals, and from there I wasn't sure. And I thought we had a shot at beating, we'll say Boston in the Eastern Conference Finals. And then in the finals, if we made it that far, I wouldn't make us favorites, but I would think we'd have a chance. Like we've actually played. We've actually had a pretty good record against elite teams this year. We do pretty well, so I feel like we're a really good team, and I actually had decently high expectations. But I also felt like if we can win a playoff series, I'll call it a successful series season. I'm not going to get too greedy and like get down on us if we don't make it to the Eastern Conference Finals or something.
Yeah, I think similarly. I mean, coming into the playoffs, I thought we're either the best or the second best team in the East, depending on how Jason Tatum holds up. And but it's all really close together. Like we're very of similar quality to the Knicks. I think we're better this year, but they have a great, kind of top five, top six lineup. And, I would think even if we're better, I think it's like 60-40. So it wouldn't be a surprise if we lost to them in a series. And then similarly with Boston, where it's like, maybe it's 50-50, maybe it's 60-40 them. And so the way all that shakes out is like it's not that likely that any one team kind of makes it to the finals from the East because there are those three teams of all of in a similar tier, and then if you put Cleveland in there, depending on, I'm kind of not sure why they've become a darling a little bit because it's like, oh, they added like notable playoff hero James Harden, like what? But it did improve their team because Garland wasn't playing that well because he was hurt. But they have a lot of good players. They have a great front line with Mobley and Allen, but I'm not scared of Cleveland. Nevertheless, it's probably 70-30 we would beat them in a series or something. It just you got to kind of have things break your way. So I was similar to Carl. It was like, okay, really disappointing if we lose in the first round. Disappointing, but not catastrophic. Like we need to rethink everything if we lose to a tough matchup in the second round. I forget who the bracket has us like meeting in the second round. Is it the Knicks? What's the Cavs? Yeah, so like the Cavs are a tough team. I think we're better than them, but they're a good team. So we would have to see how things break, and then in the conference finals, we'll be facing somebody really good. No, but still, we have like a +7, point, net rating. That a lot of teams win the title with that. Like if there weren't Oklahoma City on the other end of the bracket, I would think, hey, we're in the mix with everybody. But they're just such like a historic juggernaut. They're like the freaking '86 Celtics out there or better with how they're doing. So I'm just going to focus on the eastern half of the bracket and say it's been a great season. And as long as we don't lose in the first round, I'm pretty happy. And all arrows pointing up. We got our core together. There will be some roster changes over this next season, but like we kind of got our group that we can make a run with. And if that doesn't work, Cade's young enough that we can make rebuild, make a second run with him. So it's going to be a great kind of decade here in Detroit.
It's funny this year going into the playoffs. I actually was worried about Charlotte a little bit. Like I was sort of like because they were playing so well. Like at the end of the season, like they were like the best team in the NBA and net rating wise for like 25 games or something like that. And I was like, you know what? I bet you the way things are going to break is that we're going to be the one seed and they're going to eke into the playoffs and then we'll be facing them. And we had like those really tough matchups and like the fight and everything, and it was like a really good rivalry. It would have been an awesome series, but like I didn't want like an awesome exciting series in the first round. So I was actually surprised that the Magic beat them. But then at the same by the same token, now the Magic are like woke up and pulled their heads out of their asses and they're like look good again. So maybe I want to. I'm kind of curious for your. I know you talked about this in the previous pod a bit, but like, what did when you were thinking ahead? Did you think that Charlotte would have a shot against the Pistons?
No, I didn't, but I know that they had that fun. Well, I don't know, if fun's the right word, but the fun for the fans game with the big fight and everything. So, but I think you guys whooped Charlotte's butt the next game, the last game you played it.
Well,
Um,
that game was actually a little bit like today's playoff second game against the Magic, where it was really close and really competitive. That Charlotte game for 3 quarters, and it was back and forth, and nobody could hold the lead. And Charlotte was playing really hard, and they succeeded in making me dislike them, which is a compliment. And then we turned the water off in the fourth quarter, and they couldn't score. And so that's our blueprint for getting out of a tough game. But we had to do that to Charlotte in that tough our last matchup against them regular season, and we had to do that against the Magic today.
yeah, and Charlotte's defense is nowhere near nowhere near the Pistons level. But yeah, you guys have been really great against the top teams. 3-1 against the Celtics, 3-0 against the Knicks. That bodes well. 2-2 versus the Cavs. I don't know how many, what time of year those games were, whether they were pre or post Harden. But I think,
Yeah,
having
I think one of them was post Harden, but maybe one of Harden. I think
who
Mitchell
won
was
it
out,
though.
but Mitchell was out and we beat him. But so I don't think we ever. I'm not sure we ever played him full strength yet.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah, okay. So that'll be interesting. I think in my preview pod, I was gonna pick the Cavs. I'm a bit of a Donovan Mitchell fan, and then I was like, wait a second, they got James Harden playoff playoff loser. James Harden is gonna sink it for him. So you guys don't worry. I think if you could beat these Magic, you'll be on your way to the conference
I
finals.
mean,
Rob.
Donovan Mitchell's awesome. No question. He always steps it up in the playoffs. Someone was saying last week he's made the playoffs every year of his career, but he's never more made it more than one round past the second round, which is kind of interesting.
He is the top five scorer ever by average in the playoffs.
Yeah, and we've been watching him closely ever since we drafted Luke Kennard over him.
I was gonna mention that. And Luke Kennard is doing pretty well this playoffs too. I don't know if you've been watching
He
your Lakers
is.
games. He was
He
five for
is.
five in Detroit. Gosh, you had like Amari Stoudemire on the team. Oh, that was rough. Mr.
Some
3-on-3
retreads. Yeah,
championship.
yeah. We
I think
we
Reggie
had
Jackson came in and that it started to get a little bit of life, but
we had the last gasp of Blake Griffin's knee cartilage, and he made third team All NBA and was awesome, and then got hurt during our first round playoff series, and it was all she wrote. So yeah, a few false starts there.
I did watch a game. On my birthday, my wife got me like four really great seats. Me and my mom and little brother, and we watched. You mentioned Blake Griffin, so I got to bring this up. And they were playing Houston, and my mom, my mom is so funny. She's like, "Hate that Harden guy." He's doing all all his like foul bait and stuff. And Blake Griffin hit a three to win the game. It was one of the best games ever. Shout out to
Amazing.
Actually, I just looked it up, and the last time we played the Cavs, they didn't have Donovan, and we lost to them, and we had Cade and during that game. So
Did they
definitely
have
was
Harden?
they had Harden, yeah. So that was not a great game for us. That was one of our last losses of the season, actually. No, that was at the beginning of the year. But no, at the end of the year, we lost to we lost to Cleveland back in March 3rd. That was kicking off we had a mini losing streak. That was the only time we lost 4 games in a row the whole season. But yeah, do we have? Sorry, I might have botched that stat there, but
I would recommend to you guys watch some Cavs game. We're making fun of Harden, but wow, he has looked really amazing these first 2 games. Him and
I
Mobley
mean,
have got a special connection.
he's an all timer for a reason.
So,
On offense
we
and
know he's going
defense.
to choke, but, we never know when that's going to happen.
well, plus the Cavs. I mean, last season they won over 60 games, right? I think, and they
They
were
did.
like the dark. There
Yeah.
was, so I think I was almost wondering their disappointments in the playoffs last year might have calibrated the national media to not give us too much credit too early because they were even better with their record last year and then they fizzled in the playoffs a bit. So I think it's fine that we have to prove ourselves before people can give us a ton of respect. I mean, people have been not disrespectful, but I feel like I love like Zach Lowe and I listen to all the Bill Simmons podcasts and I feel like they almost every time they talk about the Pistons, they're always talking about the the other team or like us in relation. Like they never like really look at us and what we're good at. They're always like talking about like we're almost like a passive actor compared to the other team that they're more interested in.
And
Yeah, and
Oh, no.
yeah, it's
Well, we know Bill has his Boston proclivities. Zach, we expect to break it down a little.
well, and he was sort of like you could tell that he didn't think Cade was first team All NBA, and that's fine. Like he was sort of like polite about it, but like I think by the end he's like, yeah, fine, I'll put him fifth. Like he has had a great season, but you could tell that he never was like making an insightful case for like why the Pistons were awesome or like they just sort of like they would just like acknowledge that we're have a good record and sort of say we'll see, and I guess that's fine. I mean that's what made me. I mean I just want obviously I want the Pistons to win for a lot of reasons, but my fear after the first game was like, what if we just sort of like completely crap out in the first round and it's just like so disappointing and everyone all the haters were like, yeah, see, they're just they can't they're not a good enough team, and I guess they would have been right. But I want to see what we can do because I really still believe that we can make it deep into the playoffs.
In
we
his
got a chip on our
defense,
shoulder.
Cade only became eligible on the last day of voting.
But this was like in the like before he got injured when there was a lot of like even MVP buzz, like when it looked like things might break just right, where like if Jokic and Wemby were out.
But yeah, well, there are people talking Cade's going to win it. I mean, or it'll be, I mean, I guess I remember, I kind of know what you're talking about, that they were a little bit dismissive, like, oh my God, Cade's going to win it. But, he probably would be. 'Cause all those guys were really close.
Yeah, SGA, Jokic. Yeah, it could have. That would have almost felt wrong in a way. Like you would look back in history and be like, Cade. Like, I mean,
See, you're dissing the guy too, Carlos.
I think he's legit top like fifth, like top five player this season, and I think he's a legit top 10 player. And which if I could go back in time 3 years ago and tell myself that, I'd be thrilled. But I don't think he's the best player in the world by any stretch of
Yeah,
the
yeah,
imagination.
sure.
Yeah, he's in that tier with I think he's a little better than Donovan Mitchell and like Tyrese Maxey's emergent level, and just sort of that like that next tier below your Jokic, SGA, Wemby, and then depending on what your tastes are, Luca is clearly better, more productive on offense, and clearly worse on defense, and clearly like aesthetically harder to watch with whining to the refs and stuff, but probably 25 out of 30 or more GMs would take Luca over Cade, maybe 30 out of 30, but Cade's in that next level.
Well,
Whereas like,
Nico's not in the league anymore, so maybe third.
Like I wouldn't trade Cade for Ant, for example, which is surprising. Like I really wouldn't. And I'm not sure I would trade him for Luca, even though I probably should. I just like Cade that much as like he's just the he's
Yeah,
got the
that
free
makes
ball.
sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's more
I
of a
mean,
look at player.
Luca's like far more efficient, but yeah,
he
the
is.
the defense is a factor too.
I would trade him for Wemby or Jokic or SGA though. I think.
Yeah, interesting. Well, but it's all going to talk about Cade, and he's your franchise player. But let's talk a little bit about some of
Cade's
your
jersey
other
on, yeah.
players
Yep.
that maybe that we can get some deep cuts on here from the Brothers Rosaen. I think first let's do a little postmortem on Jaden Ivey. I have a question. Maybe this is too tough or something, but was there any reports of his like sort of strong religious beliefs during his time in Detroit?
No, not that I
No,
No.
saw.
never. I mean, nothing more than what you see typically with players like giving it up to God or Jesus at the end of a game or something like that. Yeah, I could tell he was religious, but I never got a sense that he was like. I'm not sure there was maybe in retrospect and like that piece that came out that was co-written by our current like athletic reporter for the Pistons and James Edwards, who used to be the one. And I think there might have been one time when he like chided like asked a reporter if he like you know believed in God or something like that. But I never was on my radar.
Yeah, same here. Like we never got that. There's sort of tiers to these things. Lots and lots and lots of Americans and lots of NBA players are religious, and so that's not really doesn't raise any eyebrows, or it's a normal way to be a person. But there's that next level of like where religious people are like, can you calm down a little bit? Like Jonathan Isaac in Orlando's like writing books about stuff that are making people be like, wait, what are you talking about? But even he like he's not getting like canceled or anything. And then yeah, Ivy, I don't know what to say about his like homophobic comments and stuff. I think one can speculate that it's just like he's in a bad place in his life because he said something that sounded like he thinks his knee might make it so he's not the same guy like ever again athletically. After his broken leg from Cole Anthony diving into his leg, so maybe he's just in a bad place and has turned to the turned that way. But we're gonna see, like, is he just out of the league forever now, or is he gonna go on the like PR apology tour? Is he gonna go to rehab for whatever? That seems to be what rich people do when they say something horrible and come back. But we know I always thought of him as a good character guy. I always thought he tried hard. He wasn't good at defense, but he wanted to be, and he tried hard. He really was team first in publicly with taking a second chair to Cade and like working his way into the lineup. Zach Lowe would always point out that he ran way more pick and rolls when Cade was off the floor, but when he was on the floor with Cade, he just played a different role altogether. Didn't have the ball in his hands and found his way to be a good shooter and stuff. I just I had high hopes for him, and I liked him being part of our team, and it just sucks that he's like flamed out from Chicago to have them just waive him. I mean, talk about screwing up real bad.
Well, there was like, and it was also kind of touching to see when we were in Chicago, I think, and our current players like went over to him after the game, and you could see genuine affection in terms of like seeing their old buddy and stuff. And I think Duran especially was like, yeah, this is my brother, and like so my read of it is that Ivy was like a really good guy, but also maybe sort of sensitive and hard on himself and pushed himself a lot. And then when things really were breaking his way and he was not breaking into the lineup and he got traded and then he got like benched, he got like a DNP CD, and I just could sort of see things falling in on him. I think he's like really having a hard time just like mentally, like mental health wise, like religious or not. I think he's sort of having like almost like this sort of like manic rants that he just goes on. Like he went on these, like, some of the things that he said were pulled from like very long, like hour-long Instagram live feeds. I think I didn't like go back and watch them or something, but I think it wasn't just like he happened to say something that was insensitive like in a normal interview. He was like sort of preaching or something like that almost.
Yeah, it seemed like he was proselytizing.
Yeah, so I never saw any of that before. So my read of it is that he's having a hard time adjusting to his like new circumstances, and it's not going well, and he needs some help, I think.
It seems like maybe his stats weren't all that bad. Is there why was he out of the lineup?
It was a little puzzling from the outside, from the fans' point of view this year. I think, because last year on paper, he turned himself into a pretty good 3-point shooter, and he had one pitch in baseball terms that was really good. Like when he gets the ball in transition, he actually could just like he was so fast running on the break, and it was really impressive. And so he was like, okay, we could have a second guy who can break down the defense with the ball in his hands.
Yeah,
And we
I
come into
just want
this
to
season,
remind all the listeners. I mean, Jaden Ivey was he was like a number 5 pick or something.
yeah,
I think
yep,
the
number 5.
year after Cade Cunningham was drafted, so
That's right,
he was
and
like
and
pretty high up.
his super athletic. His grandfather played for the Detroit Lions. They always made a big deal of on the Pistons broadcast. And then we came into this year, and he somehow, he was coming back from a broken leg, big injury, couldn't find his place. But by the way, we went on a big, like, our record was a lot better after he got hurt last year. And people and I was like, oh, I was trying to like think my way towards like, well, that doesn't mean that he's bad, does it? But our team identity solidified.
I remember that.
I feel like I felt like he could have been, part of things, but the reporting after we traded him was that he got the message this year. He received the message from the coaching staff. Hey, you're not going to be like one of the top guys. You're going to be a role player, and you got to find your spot. We have our identity, and so we were playing. There's a lot of like 32-year-old Javante Green, getting minutes that seemed like they could have gone to Jaden Ivey, and it kind of worked. Like Javante Green is a great defender, and he played great today. He was like keeping us in the game before the third quarter where we pulled away against Orlando today as a role player, as like a minimum contract guy. And so Ivy's more talented. He can hit the open shots better, but like our defense works better. And for whatever reason, the coaches didn't think he was the way our team was built and balanced, that he had a spot, and he couldn't find his way in. And it was just sort of surprising, but like, hey, we're on the outside and we don't know what they're seeing in practice. And what we're doing obviously worked. So, who am I to criticize?
I also just had a feeling watching games. I mean, I watched, I watched like almost every Pistons game, which is kind of crazy. And it just felt like there were so many, like Alex said, you couldn't prove it, but it just seemed like we weren't as good as we should be when he was playing. And like somehow him and Cade didn't mesh as well as you would hope. And he would often like make some spectacular drive to the rim, but then miss the layup or something, or just like kind of be a little bit out of control. He would make some threes, but then he wasn't stellar on defense, and he would, so we would somehow we just didn't seem as good. Like it was a sort of a hard thing to gauge. Like his like counting stats, I think made him look better than he ended up being effective on our team, which was sort of sad because I think everyone was pulling for him, especially when he got a great start to last season. But to Alex's point, it's almost like right when he got injured is when we turned the corner and started winning like way more games. It was, I don't know. So
Yeah,
just simplified to have
that's
like
great
three really.
insight, guys. Thanks, Alice and Carl. Yeah, that was helpful. I think from the outside, it's like, I'm like, hey, this guy was a fifth pick. Was highly drafted. It seems like maybe the Pistons could use a secondary, scorer type. They're very Cade centric, but yeah, hey, if it wasn't working, it wasn't working. But let's talk about some other players. I'm going to go through a list on a few players. We don't need to spend 10 minutes on each guy, but I'm curious, just some brief thoughts and whether you think that these players are a couple questions. So answer, do you think they're a core piece? And should the team, should the team re-sign them going forward? So let's talk about Sir Thompson.
So I love Asar Thompson, and
We've noticed.
I feel like whenever when I was getting nervous with the trade deadline and whether we'd make a big move, the three players that I felt like were untouchable were Cade, Duran, and Asar. Like I could live with other players being traded, but to me, Asar is just not only like he's currently awesome, and I think his upside is huge. So just
Okay,
his
but you were talking earlier and you mentioned that, some teams do exploit him, right? His lack of shooting, they can play 15 feet off of. Is there like a recent example that you can think of where it really hurt the Pistons, maybe?
I mean, it's just part of every game that he's in. Actually, that I think the positives outweigh the negatives. Like the negatives are part of the story of our half court offense bogging down is if we have two or three non-shooters on the floor, and he's one of them, and he's an extreme non-shooter. I think in his first couple of years, someone said he had more air balls than makes from three. So he's just like probably not going to get there. But the positives are just insane steals and blocks, and he's probably like, I wonder if he's the best 10-point per game scorer in the league this year. And he's a connective, passer on offense. He's not like a creator or like Magic Johnson out there or anything, but he keeps the ball moving. He has the right instincts. So it's like, I don't know. I mean, could he, turn into, the unlikely but possible best case scenario is he turns into like a Scottie Pippen type of guy. But there's probably like a 5% or less chance of him getting, 90% of the way there to where anyone else makes that comparison. But that's the type of like, incredible defender, connective player on offense, maybe more of a playmaker. Pippen played at a time where it kind of didn't matter that you couldn't shoot threes, and then he later in his career he started making threes. So, but on the other hand, the other guys people compare, I think of Andre Karolinko or like Sean Marion or something. Those guys are bigger, and Asar plays on the wing, so it is kind of tough. Like it's kind of high risk, high reward with him. Is the real answer? It's like we're gonna hold him back and like not include him in any trades, or if we try to, let's say, I don't think we're gonna do this, but if we try to go for Giannis or something, we're gonna be like, oh, but you can't have Asar. But then like it might turn out that he just kind of never gets better than a role player who makes an all-star game if you win 60 games, but then other than that, like, makes two all-star games in his whole career or something. That's also entirely possible, and he could be really good and really valuable, but never a star. I mean,
I
we just don't know what's going to happen. It's real high variance.
I also kind of wonder like I wish I knew more about like advanced stats to like look at a player's impacts on defense, but I feel like when I watch the games, he has an outsized impact that's hard to quantify in terms of just like
He has the highest defensive box plus minus on the team. He's a
okay, that's pretty good. That's
3.6.
pretty good.
Yeah. Cade's at like 1.5.
And another player he reminds me of is Ron Holland. I'm not sure if we're gonna get to him. Like he actually just like looks like a bad player when you look at this like his box plus minus and stuff or his plus minus. But like he also is someone who I really like who has a really big impact when he comes into the game in terms of his effort and defensive impact. And sometimes he just like gets like a foul per minute and like it's actually just clearly bad. But I think Ron Holland could turn into like an Asar Thompson, and I'm hoping Asar Thompson turns into like you know his brother. It's sort of the pipeline of
Ron sort of adds also kind of a little bit of like, what's the word? Toughness or like a little anger edge, right? That sometimes the
Yeah.
team needs. Yeah. Yeah. So it sounds like you guys like Asar Thompson. He's a core piece and definitely resign.
He's a core piece, but it might not work out. But if it does work out, it's going to be so awesome that we should probably hang on to him and make that
I
bet.
guess I would say I'm glad that we decided to see where our current core could go and didn't try to do some big move because this core could be good enough to be a contender. And if like we go deep in the playoffs and we think we can keep growing, then like we just stick with what we got, and like he's a core piece of that. If it turns out that like we get exposed in the playoffs because things slow down and you need better shooting and we just can't get out of the first round, then like that would tell us that like maybe someone like him we can't afford to give like a max contract to. Maybe we wouldn't have to, but like we couldn't afford to give him like a huge contract.
Those Thompson twins are just so athletic. I totally understand that falling in love with them. Let's move on to Jalen Duren. Speaking of max contracts, you had some thoughts on him earlier, Alex?
Yeah, I mean he's a core piece. I mean he has like a top 10 box plus minus in the league this year, which is like it's sort of weird, but he shoot 68%, 69% true shooting. It doesn't lie. But does it? That's the thing. It's like is he was creating much more for himself, but his usage isn't that high, but it's high enough. But he's young. He seems to have his head on straight. He's got the right attitude. He went from being a minus defender to like an adequate defender this year, and I really wrestle with the Duran situation because do you max out a center who's not like a great defender? Like teams just kind of aren't built that way. So it's like, what are we going for here? Is his best case scenario like peak Amari Stoudemire? Well, he was awesome, but he never won a title. So I'm just not sure. I'm not paid as much as Trajan Langdon for a reason, I guess, because he's got to make that decision. But it's really working with him, and he's our second best guy, and there aren't many guys who have like a plus of over 5 box plus minus. I just don't know what to do, but he's so young and so good that it would take a lot for me to want to move on from him
And
or Freedom.
He has great hands. Like it's just like the thing about him is like, both with offensive rebounding and when he gets lobs or passes, like he just finds ways to like get the ball in the hoop, kind of like the opposite of Asar Thompson in a way. Like
Or I thought you were going to say of Andre Drummond, because Drummond was similar
true,
profile,
yeah,
but even bigger, longer arms,
yeah,
better hands on defense, poking balls away and stuff. But he just couldn't make a layup. Like
Drummond's hitting threes now.
yeah, he's
He
making
had like
corner
a
threes now.
game-winning three the other day.
Good for we'll put that in his trophy case with his like vanity album that he released, you know. But I really liked Drummond when he was with the Pistons. I loved he would get a lot of pick sixes, stealing the ball. One of the best rebounders ever. But I think Duran's better, and at age 22, and he's awesome.
I
yeah.
remember
Actually,
hearing reports that he was shooting threes when I was there, and I was like, "Why? He can barely hit a layup. Come on, what's that
oh my
call?"
God, the free throws, yeah, but no, but Duran like he's a good free throw shooter. Like he can face up and he's quick. He can get past bigger bigger guards that bigger centers that can't keep up with him. And he's an amazing like rookie contract guy. Obviously, paying him a max like I'm almost nervous if he makes third team All NBA. That might just make him like hard to sign because then he could get like a even bigger max. When you pay someone a max, like when you pay someone what they're worth, like if you play we talk sometimes, if you play every person on your team what they're worth, you'll have an average team. You have to get value somehow. Cade is so good that he really is worth a max contract. But Duran, I'm not sure he's good. Like he might be worth a max contract, but he's not like outperforming his contract, and it just makes me a little bit nervous.
Well, he'd still be on that first contract max, right? Which is a
It's
lot
true.
less than the second contract one that kills you. I forgot to mention the Hornets actually gifted you guys,
But yeah, much appreciated.
I was upset about that at the time.
Wait, what happened with that? Like how would they? I know we like maneuvered to get the 12th pick also, but how did that happen?
Yeah, I can't remember exactly, but I think we like swapped sitters or something, or maybe just gave them up to you for nothing.
It was a
Probably,
trade. It,
probably Jordan was saving money or some crap.
yeah, I can't remember the exact trade, but we traded up in the or we during the draft we traded for that pick
Okay, yeah.
to get Duran.
Yeah, I think we wanted Mark Williams, I guess, and yeah, he's playing so well for Phoenix. Uh, moving on, let's talk about Duncan Robinson. Core piece or not really? Just this year.
I don't think he's a core piece. I like him a lot, and like I think he's exceeded my expectations this year. And I'm like Alex said, he is able to play a competent defense given what your expectations. He's kind of getting on the older side, and I would not want to like. I guess he has another year on his contract, so we could just kind of roll forward. But
Okay,
I'm
yeah. How about Tobias
Well,
Harris?
the thing with Duncan and Tobias is that is their age. Like as long as they're healthy and playing well, they're valuable to us. And and then Tobias, they talk about his. We valued him in the locker room this year, Uncle T. But you know, and we literally didn't have another power forward on our roster this year, so Tobias was pretty valuable in that way. We do a lot of playing Ron Holland at power forward or playing a center like Isaiah Stewart there, and like yeah, Duncan Robinson, if he wasn't getting old, like he I think had the best on off on our team this year. Like he just really unlocks our half court offense. So he's really valuable to us. Play that Malik Beasley role, and we're probably going to need he's 31 this year, so it's not like he's 37 or something. But the wheels could come off the wagon at any point. So we haven't signed to this reasonable deal that's not fully guaranteed. So it's like if he plays well, we keep him. If not, he's gives us some flexibility. It's great. It would be hard to move on from him because we need that shooting. We're probably going to try to address it in other ways. Tobias Harris is 33 this year. He's just kind of on the downslope. Last year, he was like a perfectly average player, and this year he's like just slightly less than that and plays a little fewer minutes and looks a little creakier. But we are relying on him a lot. He is a guy who can hit an open three. He's a veteran who, he played really good defense in the first half in this Orlando game today. So, but the reason they're not core pieces going forward is I think of that as like we're building around them the next few years. and they're not at the age or profile where we do that. I could see us upgrading at the power forward spot. Everyone was talking about us trying to get Lowry Markkinen or someone this year. Like I don't know what the move is, or I don't know what I want, but they're part of this team. They're part of this good balanced team, but they're replaceable if we can find someone else really good too. It would take a lot to replace them, but it's doable.
He was a real punching bag with the Sixers, but I think
It's because
he's
he
a
was
good
paid
player
too
for
much.
you
That's
guys.
the
Just
thing. It's like Tobias
yeah,
is making more like the mid level exception for us, and he was making max money for the Sixers, and he was supposed to.
yeah, he's a competent piece. I think just watching him even tonight, I'm reminded how he can't really create his own shot. Like he doesn't kind of have dribbling moves or whatever
But
to.
he fits on every team. He's 6'9", veteran defender, hit an open shot, can post a smaller guy up, and that's about it. And so he fits in.
We had him before, and we traded him for Blake along with 2 first-round picks, and that was a bad trade. It was fun briefly because, like Alex mentioned, Blake Griffin had like a,
Well, that's right. Yeah.
and then the Clippers turned around and traded Blake Griffin for no,
Play
turned around
trade
and traded
Tobias.
Tobias for 2 more firsts to the Sixers. So when you look back at the Pistons, we could have, like, in theory, had somehow had 4 first-round picks for Tobias or something. Not really, but like,
Yeah, I mean, props to Tobias's agent. Wow.
yeah, yeah.
But let's keep it moving. This isn't about core pieces exactly, but I think as an outsider, I'm looking at that first game. I'm seeing Karis LeVert only getting 4 minutes. I'm like, what's going on here? Team needs to score a little more. What do you got? What did you guys think
I
of
mean,
that?
he has a role that was sort of absorbed by Dennis Jenkins. We got him because he can create his own shot against second units. He can have a little higher usage. He's not great at it, but he's not horrible. He's just like he has his thing that he does. He can get to the basket. He can hit an open shot. And this year he's been playing really hard on defense and with kind of adequate results as part of a good team defense. And he's a veteran. So, like, yeah, I mean, these are the guys you need on your team. We have a deep, well balanced team that functions well together, and he's part of that. He's another one of those guys who I don't think he's irreplaceable or anything. I was glad. I was glad we had him this year. I thought he would have done a little better for us this year. He had like a really long cold shooting stretch, but he could have a moment in the playoffs where he is part of a important run in an important game. He's a good kind of utility to have, but other than that, I kind of don't think about Levert too
I
much.
just don't think he's that good anymore. I mean, like, if you look at his stats, he kind of like he was like good at 3 point shooting every other year, and then, like, except that he wasn't good this year. He was like due to bounce back after a bad year, and I think the bottom line is he just did it. He wasn't as effective as we thought, and so I wouldn't mind to see. I do think that you can still throw him in there to see if he can try to create some offense. At least he can, like, get to the rims and things like that. But I don't think he's a part of our future necessarily.
Yeah, we have him signed next year. He's an expiring contract at 14.8, so he'll either play approximately well enough that we can play him, or he can be part of a trade package, like whatever. He has a lot of uses potentially.
Well, thanks, guys. Thanks for all the insight on the Detroit Pistons. I wish you all the best of luck. I want to just kind of change gears now and talk a little bit, sort of just some brief thoughts maybe on just your overall thoughts on the NBA this year, the NBA Cup, how you think the state of the
Yeah,
league.
there's all this discourse about the NBA being in trouble or not being as fun to watch or needing to make changes. And the tanking thing did seem like a problem, obviously, at the end of the year. I know that we're going to talk about your snazzy proposal for that, hopefully. But I guess maybe I just have a myopic view because I just watched a ton of Pistons games. But, like, the Pistons were fun to watch this year. Like, they tried really hard. And, like, I don't know. I just when I watch the NBA, I do think that, like, the opinion that people don't try very hard is a little bit dated. Like, they obviously don't try as hard as the playoffs, but, like, they're so much better. Like, I have a hard time watching college basketball. Like, it's just the NBA players are so much better. Like, they're so much more skilled, and I do think they try hard. I mean, especially the
So
good
you, yeah, you said that you watched like every single Pistons game. So you did you feel like it sounds like you didn't really feel it when they're playing a tanking team that, it wasn't worth watching at least.
I do think the end of the season tanking thing is a real issue, but I do think that like in terms of earlier in the season when people are like, well, how can we make more regular season games feel relevant like the play-in games? It's like, well, you can't. Like, there's going to be some elevation to playoff games, right? I don't know. I think the NBA is fun to watch, and like the tanking is a real problem, but I think, I guess I just don't see as big a problems as some of the big pundits do with the league in general. Besides a big problem with the tanking problem.
Yeah, I sort of feel like people just need something to talk about. Like baseball teams play 162 games or whatever. It's like a lot of those don't matter, and most of the teams don't make the playoffs and stuff. That you just sort of watch your team and root for them, and like the like Carl said, if you are playing a team where none of their top three players are playing or something like that, that sucks. But other than that, like it's like if you go see a musical or something like that, do the performers have to be doing a good professional job and being talented for you to have fun? Yeah. Other than that, they don't have to be performing like it's the last performance of their whole life or something. Not everything has to be so elevated. I think we have so many options in our life now where it's hard to get people to not just like sit slack-jawed scrolling their phone. So everything has to be like super heightened and elevated all the time. But like if you go to an NBA game, it's awesome and fun to watch. If you watch your team, it's as good as it's ever been, I guess. Like, why are there all these rules about resting players and stuff? It's because the guys they're running faster and playing harder than they did. Like they played at a faster pace in the '80s, but they got across half court and just sort of dragged Tree Rollins at center into the paint and just like threw it into the post to Robert Parrish, and like everybody stood around. It's like everyone's running really hard, closing out on stuff. Like I don't know, people are trying hard, I think, and so I don't mean to be defensive. That's what I see when I watch. It's like it's
When
professional
you
basketball
guys,
guys doing their thing, and I like watching it. If your team sucks, it's hard to watch, but that's true in any
yeah,
sport.
yeah, you guys are clearly riding high on the first place Pistons that you got there in your hometown. As a season ticket holder for the Charlotte Hornets, it was rough. The not last year, but the previous 2 years. We got stars sitting or injured half the year, and just playing people that I just learned their names when I sat down that
Sure.
night. So, and tanking is a really big topic. I think it's gotten to the point where coaches are doing silly things like fouling the other team so they can lose and stuff. And
Yeah, that sucks.
and the flattening of odds and stuff hasn't really worked. So I actually, part of the reason I wanted to have you guys on is I have a proposal for how they should fix the NBA draft to eliminate the tanking problem, but still support competitive balance. So let me run this by you guys and for the listeners. Okay, so the idea is just very simple, the core idea. Basically, have completely flat odds for every team in the lottery and all picks 1 to 14. So, like, pick out of the hat style. Why do this? This will completely eliminate the utility of losing games to get a better draft pick for any of the non-playoff teams. So, there'll be no, like, at worst case, even if we lose the lottery, we'll still get fifth pick if we're the worst team in the league. No, you every pick, every single pick, 1 to 14, would be, a pick out of the hat lottery style. It would also help teams that are sort of right on the cusp of the playoffs but didn't make it, like the Hornets or like some perpetual teams like the Chicago that, are trying, and kind of that middle of the pack teams that you hear about as like the worst place to be in the NBA, right? That'll go away because those teams will have just as good a chance of getting the first pick as, the worst team. But it'll still keep some competitive balance if you made the playoffs and you have a really good team. We want. I like really parity in the league. I think that's something that NFL does really well, and to me, that's more interesting for every team to feel like they have a chance, for teams to be able to get out of the gutter. And so, I don't want any of these kind of proposals where it's like, oh, if you're the worst teams, you don't get a top pick, or oh, these, the best team in the league, it'll go in a cycle or something. To me, I think I still want that core idea of, if you didn't make the playoffs, you now have a chance to get a player that can change things. But we want to, with this sort of completely flat odds system, should eliminate tanking, but still give these teams a chance. However, the league, there is a problem with this. The league's tried this before. Okay, from about 1984 to 1992, the league had this system, and it came to the end when the Orlando Magic won the lottery 2 years in a row. Their first pick was Shaq, and the next year they didn't quite make the playoffs. I think they were the best team that didn't make the playoffs, and they won again, and they picked Penny Hardaway out of that. So
I
they
think
cut.
it might have been the
They picked Chris Webber was the first pick, but they
yeah
traded to
with
get
traded with Golden State. Yeah,
Penny Hardaway. Yeah, and so people really didn't like that, right? They didn't like that a team won 2 years in a row. And so to sort of mitigate this, I want to add something to the draft proposal that might be a bit controversial. And this is the part I want to talk through with you guys. Basically, the idea is that if a team wins first place in the lottery, they will not be able to pick it first again for the next 2 years. So their name will effectively be taken out of the hat when the first pick is made in the following 2 years. So this will mean that a team can only win the top draft pick once every 3 years at best. And this rule would apply to any and all draft picks that the team owns. You can't just, trade with one team, trade back or something to get out of it. If you own 5 draft picks, none of them would be in the hat, just to kind of completely eliminate this possibility. So, just to kind of explain this a little bit more. So, let's say this rule was in place for this year's draft, then the Dallas Mavericks, who won Cooper Flag last year, and the Atlanta Hawks, who won Zachary Ricochet, neither of them would be able to get that top pick. The Hawks obviously aren't in the lottery. I don't think they have a lottery pick, but I just
they have New
assuming that
Orleans
they
lottery
were.
pick, but yeah, their own is not.
Oh, you're right. They do have New Orleans lottery pick. So, but they wouldn't be able to be because they won 2 years ago, even with New Orleans lottery pick. So this is a good example of that rule. And so, this might, however, introduce some weird things with trades, and teams lottery picks then will be like the Mavericks and the Hawks lottery picks would be less valuable, right, than everybody else's lottery pick because they are mitigated in this way. And so maybe they would try to trade with a team, and those guys give them a little promise or something like, hey, we'll give it back to you, just give us $1 million or whatever. And so to kind of mitigate that, there'd be another rule that basically teams will not be allowed to trade the draft pick or the player drafted with said draft pick back to the original team that owned it within 1 year. So that's hoping to mitigate it. And then just to kind of complete the whole set of rules, I think there's also an issue where teams, get multiple top three picks. And so I think I wanted to also just kind of eliminate the random chance possibility of a team getting, three top three picks in a 3 year span. And so there'd be another sort of rule that this is basically works exactly like that mitigation for the first pick. However, now it's if a team wins two top three picks in a 2 year span, like in subsequent years or as part of the same year, they will not be in a drawing for the top three pick the next year. So this one's a little more complicated to think about, but it's sort of the same rule as like I said, as the mitigation for the top one pick. This is open to suggestions, like maybe it should be top five, or maybe it should be for 5 years or something like that. But the idea is that the same rules would apply. Now, I sent you guys this proposal a little earlier, so you can take a think on it, and please criticize away, or try and find some holes in it because I'm interested
I
here.
think I do like the idea of having even odds, and it does make me think that one benefit also for parity on that would be your draft pick like that you could trade would be more valuable because it's like oh you like now it's like oh if people think you're going to be particularly bad, then your first round picks are even more valuable. Whereas it would sort of just make everybody's so evenly valuable in a way, like their future firsts. But my maybe my reaction is maybe don't add the complications. Like for just for argument's sake, if you just had like the system before, where you didn't have any of these protections to make sure people couldn't get too lucky, it was extremely unlikely. What was it like less than like a 0.5% that someone could win the lottery twice in a row, and that was just extremely unlikely. And maybe just
It's just for 14
so one over 14
1
to
divided by 14. Yeah, 1
yeah,
over
that's like a
14.
0.5% or something like that. So maybe I could maybe the argument is just like let crazy luck happen if it happens to happen, but it's still going to be very unusual. Maybe it's almost like a PR thing. Like maybe we don't care that much, but we think that people would backlash and break the system if that was the case. Like,
Well, it's like a 7% chance, Carl. So each year, the team that won has a 7% chance of.
but
Yeah,
ahead of time, the same team winning twice in a row is a 0.5%. Like before it happens, I guess.
but it'll happen like at least once again in NBA history if we just the NBA sees the wisdom of Operation Delp and just implements it and locks it in forever. It would happen at least once again in history, and everyone will be mad. So yeah, why not just sort of put your thumb on the scale and say it works that way. You can have luck happen, except you just can't be first. You could be second again, and then and what I like about the sort of you can't get too lucky aspect is it makes it so if you try to go full Sam Hinkie and have the process, like it makes it so that's not even like a plan that's functional. Your plan can't be to get a top three pick every year in a row because once you get it a couple times, you're done for a while, and then you're just like you have a bad team and you can't even get a top three pick, and so it does lean against kind of structurally tanking in a way where you're just like we're just gonna be horrendous for like multiple years. We have no veterans or whatever. So I think that makes some sense, and it's just like it's like a common sense thing. Like people just understand, like oh, we're just not going to let you know. I think the only thing I would add is like the Spurs can't get a generational center ever again. I think that's just like a
That's just a special
yeah,
caveat.
yeah. It's
You
like a
hit it
lifetime
up.
achievement award for them. No, but no. So I don't. I like that part. There is one downside to that aspect of it, which is that it does make it pretty brutal if you just are legitimately bad and you're not tanking. You just like you win the lottery in the Risachet year, and you can't get better from it. And you take Killian Hayes with a top 10 pick, and then you're just like still bad. And then so you have to take long, but that so you're letting some bad luck.
Well, Hayes was a seventh pick. I
He
mean
was the
that,
seventh pick, so it wouldn't really. But
but yeah,
so
there
maybe
there
that's
are
not there.
some terrible years with like Reese Shays or Alex
Anthony
Bennett.
Bennett,
Yeah,
whatever, goes
Anthony
really high,
Bennett. Yeah.
and then you could end up getting some shenanigans where like the team like trades out of the pick or something. If because some
Well,
years.
that's what I'm trying to mitigate. I think that's the
Well,
part
no,
where.
in the following way, where there's like, okay, looking a couple years ahead as to like who's a freshman in high school right now, who are the eighth graders, whatever. Like, when do I want to have take my first overall pick shot? And like, you want to, I don't know exactly what you would do to make sure you don't win it in certain years. You could end up with a little bit of like weirdness there. I would have to really think that through or game it out. It does make it so you could end up being really bummed you got the first overall pick because not only you get one and you're not that excited about the guy, and then also you can't get it next year even if you still suck, and so that takes away a source of hope from some fans. But you can still get a top three pick, and then if you get a couple of top three picks your team's still bad, it could make the sort of slog through the desert even longer for some teams that are just have some bad luck. Maybe there's a Len Bias situation from the 80s where like Boston takes him and then he like dies of a drug overdose the next day or whatever happened. And then it's like, oh man, and they're still banned from getting the pick. So, you can't think of everything ahead of time and like tweak things exactly right. I think most people would probably think that the like, okay, look, we can't have a Shaq and Penny situation. We can't have you winning it every time in a row, and the reason we're doing that is to stop the people doing the process or doing the like we're just gonna purposely be bad 5 years in a row thing. So I would have to hear more people bang on it for a bit, but I couldn't think of anything that I really hated about that part. Well, I actually have a little more of a problem with the flat odds in the following way, where it takes the distortion of everyone's behavior away from the bottom teams and puts it towards the play-in teams, to where suddenly making the play-in or being the eighth seed is a huge cost compared to being the quote ninth seed where you're in the lottery. And that's I studied public policy. That's a policy cliff. You don't want to make it so you're eligible for a certain benefit if you make less than 40 grand, and if you make $1 more you like don't get health care at all or something like that, because it super duper distorts everyone's behavior and will make it so they make sure they don't earn that income. So that's in like public policy terms. But in this term, so you would end up with teams like weirdly tanking their way out of the play-in. So you're just sort of squeezing the balloon and moving it. So one thing I was thinking is to take your idea and just extend it a little more and make it so that cliff happens. First of all, the more teams you have in the lottery, the worse the odds are for every pick, and so that sort of helps in a way. What if you made it so if you're the fifth seed or worse, you're in the lottery? Because no team's going to tank their way out of the fourth seed to like. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they'd be like, hey, having the fifth seed and having a lottery pick, that's even better than having the fourth seed. But you would have to just boldface like get out of having home court in the playoffs to do it. But maybe that would have the same problem. But you would have that cliff, and that's why they had the gradually changing odds to where it's like it's still better odds if you're worse, so that by the time you get to where you're just on that margin between being in the lottery and being in the playoffs, it's only a very small odds you're doing. And so that's the benefit of the current system. So maybe you extend it more, you flatten it more, and instead of like right now, I think if you're among the worst three or four or five teams, you have like a 50-50 chance of being top three. What if it's only 25%, and then it's gradually a little more, and the bottom couple teams in the playoffs are in it too? But I'm just doing more of the same.
Well, Alex, that sounds a lot like the current system because
Right. It's take the current system and do it harder. I don't love that idea,
yeah.
there is a problem at wherever you have that cutoff between being in the lottery and not. You're going to have distorted behavior and weird distorted behavior where people are playing a game where you're supposed to try to win, and you're not trying to win is what everybody hates. And
I
it
think
just
you have
gets
a point
turned the other
about the yeah. I think you have a point about the play-in games. People could try and tank those. I actually kind of thought the Warriors maybe were trying to tank Tides, so that they miraculously won the first one. Yeah, and I'd be open to, I don't know, maybe the play-in teams still get in the lottery, but they have like half as many points or something like that. Something like that. The play-in concept is all like only 5 years old or whatever.
yeah.
It's all pretty new.
And people like
But
it.
it
That's
definitely
fine.
was exciting this year. Well, at least the first couple of games.
For sure. Yeah.
And
So
but I think it was also made to give teams more interest in playing harder at the end of the year, which maybe wouldn't be as necessary if you have a situation like
yeah,
this.
and the thing is, it's just like right now, if you just barely don't make the playoffs, you get a lottery pick, but it's very low odds. So it's not that valuable to make that leap into there. If you go to where just barely going over the edge, you have the same odds as the worst team in the league. It's just a lot juicier, and so it's I don't know what the perfect balance is, because
Yeah.
fundamentally what we have here, this is why people propose the wheel or not having a draft at all or something, is like if you have any connection whatsoever with losing and getting Cooper Flag, we sort of have GMs now that are a little too sophisticated, and they're not doing the old school I don't care, I'm trying to win. They're doing the like, oh, I'm going to be really clever, I have a bunch of lawyers around me, like I read the rules of board games very carefully and try to exploit loopholes. Everyone's just like real like card
Nothing
sharp.
wrong with that, Alex.
Hey, some of my best friends are
For board games, I mean.
are board game rule readers, right? But suddenly we have this like people actually going for it to exploit that connection between losing and getting a pick. So I've had thoughts like,
Well,
well,
it's not that sudden. It's been going on for 20, 30 years.
well,
Yeah.
no, but people are just like taking it more seriously now and just taking it to its logical extreme, like, and having less, having being more shameless about like, yeah, we're just trying to lose. We're not trying to win this basketball game. Before they would try to hide, oh, let's play the young guys, and now they're just like, yeah, we're trying to lose. We're taking actions in the game to try to lose, and it's just, it's getting out of control.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's hard to know how to break that connection. I've had some thoughts like, well, what if it's like a multi-year thing where it's like it's your last 5 years of record. So if you're a franchise that's had some bad luck and had bad GMs and stuff, like generally the good players go your way, but that just makes tanking even more valuable because it pays off for years. I've
Yeah,
had
exactly.
I've had
That
some
could be
thoughts
as
like, what
bad.
if what if they do a sample of only we're going to pick 30 games this year and we're not going to tell you which ones, and those are the ones that your record in those games counts towards your lottery balls. So any given game, you don't even know if it matters if you lost it. It's like less than 50-50 that it even will help you to get lottery balls. But still, people, it won't matter. People will still tank if they think it'll help. So I haven't been able to think my way out of this box myself, and I like some aspects of your proposal for
By the way,
sure.
I can see where I was wrong before when I was thinking about the 0.5%. That was more like if you said what are the chances a given team was going to get the first pick twice in a
Yeah,
row?
that's the chances of an exact team.
Yeah, yeah, but give every year there'd be a 7% chance that the previous year got it. So that would actually happen like not that unfrequently. So, but I think I heard Stan Van Gundy on Zach Lowe's podcast give like a hot take about this and said that you should just eliminate the lottery altogether because if you have any incentive at all, like I get every time there's any incentive, you can think about some way that it would distort things. I think that that cliff that Alex mentioned comes up, and I think the just any
Well, there's also a cliff of making the playoffs, right? Like, so you win if you make the playoffs, you get a ton more money, right, from all the playoff revenue as a franchise and stuff. And so now it's like, is that 7% chance of a great, or maybe more like 25% chance of getting some great picks that much more important than all the money we're going to win from the playoffs and all the kind of like, fan interest. Sorry, Carl, I kind of cut you off,
no,
but
I mean
there is a
yeah.
cliff the other way.
I just wonder, like, no, as a fan who is not happy about making a bad trade for Blake Griffin to make the playoffs and get swept the first round against, I think it was the Cavs with Kyrie. I remember we went to the game and he waved to us bye bye. I just don't remember that. That sucked. Like I knew we were going to get blown out. Like so, I wasn't that happy about it. And if I was in the dumps about our franchise, I might have been tempted to say, "Hey, we shouldn't even bother trying to make the 8 seed. What's the point? We're going to get swept." So that's another problem. I'm not sure how it would play out. I mean, I'm not sure from a business owner, like a GM standpoint, from their revenue, if that would kind of be enough of a sway against it. But it's just a tough problem because if let's say we removed the draft altogether or did the wheel or just like did some sort of like some other system I've seen like Nate Silver's like it's kind of crazy. It was like an auction system with tokens or like all kinds. It was a very more like market based system. It might just make it so that you would have teams that just suck for a really long time and have no hopes of getting out of it, like small markets and things like that. So I just don't know like what the unintended consequences would be of any of the different kind of mitigations.
And
Yeah, I think
I like some of the stuff about you can't about restricting the pick protections because it makes the distorted behavior weird and hard to understand. I mean, maybe we just raise the rookie salary scale a bunch, and so it's just like you actually just
Well,
like
that's what Van Gundy was saying. He was saying you do both those things,
I
and
see.
and you remove the salary cap too, and then you let small markets like a small market could go out and get Luca if they'd pay him $70 million a year. They could make a bet. They could if they were smart. If they knew someone was good enough and worth it or something like that. I guess actually that's not people actually going to make that much now. $100 million a year.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I
it's
think
worked out, but I do like the sort of you have hope. Like a team won't just be like okay, we have had the Washington Wizards actually just be bad for a long time, but like it's not supposed to be that way. The lottery is supposed to help with that, and if we flatten the odds too much or whatever and take away the quote reward for losing, you will end up with some teams that just for two whole generations of fans have no hope right? Until the wheel comes around to them, and once every 30 years they get the good pick. And we hope
Yeah,
it's not the frickin' Risa Shea, Anthony Bennett type of, Michael
yeah,
Oluwakandi. You hope you don't pick Greg Oden.
right.
I don't know. I mean,
Yeah, that would be
we're
rough.
trying to do two things that are in tension with each other, and they're just trade offs. And I think you
The
made two
Wizards
arguments.
did actually get three top three picks in a row.
Who did?
The Wizards got three top three picks in a row. They
Oh,
got John Wall, Bradley Beal, and I'm forgetting his name out of
and that's the
Georgetown.
problem.
He wasn't as good. Yeah, he was the problem, especially because he got a max contract and they matched it because they're idiots.
Well, I
But
mean, the Pistons had the best shot to get Wemby, and we didn't. Like we ended up with so
No, it's
I think
because the
that
Spurs are geniuses, Carl. They're just they know how to build a franchise.
so the tweaked odds have already like made it less favorable anyway. Like having recently tanked, and thank God we got Cade Cunningham out of it. But if all we had gotten out of that was Asar and Duran and Jaden Ivey, like it wouldn't have been enough. It would have been nice, but like I mean, Jaden Ivey was turned out not to amount to a whole lot. I already kind of feel like the rewards are getting thinner anyway.
well, the Spurs got they wouldn't be subject to the rule as I just explained it, but they got not only Wimby, but then they got the number four pick and the number who ended up being rookie of the year and the number two pick the year after that. So, I think just maybe spreading the wealth a little, I mean, how nice would it be for the Wizards to get a Derek
I mean,
Harper?
it's just because of that Spurs culture. That's why they're so great. No, that it was Otto Porter. I just looked it up. He was the third guy.
Otto
He was
Porter,
he
that's
was
the
decent
man.
for a
Yeah,
while. He was
automatic.
yeah.
Automatic. He was automatic for 1 year with the John Wall passing through. But that did lead to the most exciting time for the Wizards have had in the last 40 years. Most exciting period, at least, which was nice. But yeah, it's a big topic, so I'm throwing my idea in the ring and check it out, listeners, and let me know if there's any feedback. Really great talking to you, Roseanne brothers. Anything you want to plug or any last thoughts? Please
No, I
share.
mean, we're not doing our own thing these days, and so I just appreciate the opportunity. I've listened to the first couple episodes you have out there so far, and I've liked what I've had to hear. By the way, so is your co-host? Is he like a regular like kind of long-term co-host that I've heard the first few episodes?
Yeah, he is. And you guys are my first guest without him.
Okay, cool. I
Yeah.
like him too. So you guys met as like at the you guys were like at your season tickets?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah, that's
Well,
great.
that's great. Yeah, no, yeah, nothing to plug, and glad to be here. This is a really fun conversation. Love it when people give me a PDF ahead of time that I got to study, or your the Google Doc. It was interesting to think about the proposal, and just a few tweaks away from being that perfect golden balance.
Well, thanks, Alex. Thanks for taking a look at that. Great talking with you guys again. And thanks to all the listeners. Like,
Look forward
subscribe,
to it.
5 star, and we'll see you Friday. Doug will be back, and we'll be breaking down Thursday's games. And I think Doug's going to have a new segment for you. All right.
Cool.
Tune in then. Cheers.